With that, I will go ahead and get started. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone to the March 20th, 2025 meeting of the Management Labor Advisory Committee, or MLAC. I am Patrick Priest, the co-chair for the management side. And as we do each meeting, we have an affirmation that we have agreed upon as collectively as the committee. And I would like to read that. We would like to thank everyone for their time, effort, and participation in our work before us today. We want to recognize that it is very difficult and important work, and we appreciate and value the perspectives and professionalism that everyone brings here today. And I want to thank you. All right, with that, I will turn it over to our administrator, Terry Watson, to do a roll call.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Sarah Merrick is here with me in the room. Okay, Sarah Duckwall.
I'm here.
Good morning. Co-chair Strickland.
Present by video.
Ryan Hearn.
Present.
Good morning. Margaret Waddell. Is Margaret not with us today? Okay, maybe she's joining us late. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. And Stacy Llewellyn is not here today either. Lauren Bowen.
Present by video.
Co-chair Priest.
Present.
Emily. Present. Emily's in the room. And Kim Schlesinger.
Present.
Morning. Okay, co-chair, we have a quorum.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So with that, we can move to our first item on the agenda. It's an action item. Oh, wait, no, before that, we have public comment. I'll pause for a moment and see if there's anyone that would like to raise their hand for public comment. I see none online.
Co-chair, there's nothing in the room.
Well, with that, I will move forward to our next item on the agenda, which is an action item, and that is to review the minutes from the February 27th and March 6th, 2025 meetings. Those have been distributed. Is there any discussion on them? Any comments?
Co-chair Priest, I so move on both, accepting both minutes.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. With the motion, is there any discussion of the motion or any thoughts at all? Okay, hearing none, let's take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, I vote aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Was that last stray aye? I did say opposed. Is somebody opposed?
Sorry, that was Ryan Hearn. I apologize. I was on mute. I was trying to agree with the minutes, not disagree with the minutes. So I apologize
Okay.
for the confusion.
All right, it passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, with that, we'll move on to our department updates. And first up, we have the Workers' Compensation Board case law updates. And I see Lauren Eldridge on video.
Thank you, Co-Chair Priest, Co-Chair Strickland, and members. The board has no update today.
Okay. Are there any questions for our distinguished guest? All right, well, hearing none, thank you very much for participating today. All right, next we have Workers' Compensation Division updates, and that is from our administrator, Terry Watson.
Okay, good morning. I just want to let everybody know we have IT in the room. We've taken extensive Zoom training, so we are on it. Okay. Only no incidents this week. Okay. That's all the updates I have. And I understand Margaret will be joining us soon. So
Okay.
those are my updates.
All right, well, good. That's good to hear. All right, well, moving on from that, there are no other updates then? That's a really important one. Thank you. I'm happy to hear that. We have unfinished business, and it is Senate Bill 904, which has been presented. Is there any further discussion or questions or comments from the caucus? All right, well, hearing none, are there any from the sponsor, from the stakeholders? Is there anything else to bring before the committee before we consider it?
Do you see anything?
All right, well, hearing none, I would ask that we go into caucus to consider voting on this particular Senate bill. And I'd ask the administrator to move to that if possible.
Chair, with the labor members in the room, it's going to take a minute for them to go to the caucus room. So I'm going to go ahead and open the breakout room, so it'll be just a minute, okay?
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. Margaret's
Thank you.
here. Yay. We can
Hey,
go
let me-
on. All right.
Hey, Margaret, let me put you in that room. Okay, give me 2 seconds here. There we go. Okay, I'm opening the rooms. Thank you. Co-chair, you're back in the room.
Okay, great. Well, I'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order, I guess, and ask if there is a motion to be made after our caucusing. I call on Co-Chair Strickland.
I move that MLAC recommend the legislature support SB 904.
Do I have a second?
I will second that, co-chair.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion now that we're in public meeting and all together? Okay, hearing none, I ask all that support this motion to say aye.
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 Are there any opposed?
Aye.
Again, I got a late one, so I'm assuming that's a straggler aye supporting. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, I vote aye as well to support, and so it passes unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone, for your work on that. All right, and with that, we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is updates on bills waiting on amendments. And I will ask if there are sponsors or stakeholders for House Bill 2799 that have any update for the group.
Co-chair, that would be from OTLA, I believe, if they're available to give an update.
Not necessary. If there is an update, they're welcome to provide it. All right, well, hearing none, we will wait on that amendment and then we'll talk about it later. All right, the next one is House Bill 2800, and we've got a -1 and -2 amendment. And I believe that one is from the Workers' Comp Division in Matt West. Do you have an update on that one?
Good morning, co-chairs, Priest and Strickland, members of the committee. Matt West, Workers' Compensation Division Administrator. So update on 2800 after the last meeting that it was discussed a couple of weeks ago. There were some additional concerns around some of the terminology used in the bill, specifically related to co-employment. So we had a number of discussions. Appreciate the engagement from those that had concerns, and also from the APO as we worked to find different language to describe the client PEO relationship and try to avoid using a term that caused concern. So we landed on some draft language and have submitted that. We submitted that on the 10th to Legislative Council, and we're just waiting for the official -2. We were told it would be soon, so we're hoping by next week we have the amendment. As soon as we have it, we'll send it out to all interested parties, and hopefully it satisfies the concerns and that were raised.
Thank you for that update. Any questions of Matt West? All right, well, hearing none, we have the last one awaiting amendments is Senate Bill 991. And I have some notes that say Connie is the one, I don't have a last name, but is there any update that you would like to provide to us at this time if you're on the line? All right, well, hearing none, we will wait on that amendment. All right, so now moving on to bill presentations, and the first one on our agenda is House Bill 3374. We've got a -1 and -2 amendment to this one. And we've got a presentation from Ivo Trummer, SAFE's Government Relations Director. Thank you for coming to our meeting today.
Well, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Co-chairs, members of MLAC, for the record, Ivo Trummer, Government Relations Director for SAFE. I'm here to talk briefly, I think, about House Bill 3374 and the -1 and the -2 amendment. I want to remind folks, we were back here in November, I believe, last time. We gave a fairly lengthy presentation about the issue at hand. I'll touch on that briefly. I didn't want to do the presentation, so I just want to kind of provide a couple of updates here. I'll talk about a little bit why we're doing this, what we are seeing. Elaine will talk about sort of what the bill does. I'll touch briefly on the -1 and -2, and I know there are folks in the room or at least online who will join and talk about the -1 and the -2 as well, if I may. Remember, what we presented on in November, and we've been talking to stakeholders here over a year now, is a couple of trends in work comp that we're seeing that have us worried long-term about access to care and increasing medical costs, which translates into longer recovery time for workers, which is not ideal, and higher costs, premium costs for policyholders, also not ideal. If I could ask Terry, maybe just briefly, or Baba, if you can put up the one slide that we provided. Back when we were here in November, we talked about medical cost increases at 7%.
Just a second, we're having some technical issues. Are you able to get it up, Papa? It's not popping out. Apologies.
While we do it, I think the members have the package, so they'll have it, and it's in the room. I don't know, is it posted to?
We have it in the back of the room. The slide is in the back of the room.
While it loads or doesn't load, I just say, we were here last year talking about 2023 numbers of 7% increases in medical costs for our claims. We are seeing in 2024, the last year, we have full sets of numbers now, 11% increases. The bottom line is the problem is not going away. It's only going to get bigger over time. What House Bill 3374 will provide us with the ability to work towards improving the access of timely and quality care for injured workers. And we think it's a great endeavor, and hope eventually to gain your support. If I haven't said it, I want to remind folks we're not asking for a vote by MLAC today. Elaine, if you want to talk about the bill, maybe.
Yes, hi, good morning. Elaine Schooler, Assistant General Counsel for SAFE Corporation. Thank you, co-chairs, for letting us be here and returning on our bill. You may recall back in November, we discussed the current prohibition against insurers managing any aspect of an injured worker's medical care. And our bill would expand that to allow SAFE Corporation to not only provide the claims management as an insurance company, but to also solicit and coordinate medical services for injured workers with medical providers. That could involve multiple potential solutions to the system that we think would address some of these medical escalation and access to care issues. That would include providing potentially loan forgiveness for medical providers to solicit them to enter the system and provide medical services to injured workers, expanding their current practice, or if they are new to the system. Also providing support services to medical providers to ease the administrative burden that we know comes along with providing care to injured workers and workers' compensation. Working with existing healthcare groups, regional healthcare systems, the coordinated care organizations to provide expansive services to injured workers, and potentially partner with or become, through a subsidiary, a managed care organization ourselves, and explore that option as we're not currently able to, and hopefully support a system that has seen a shrinkage in the managed care system and the number of entities that are providing those services currently. The bill would allow SAFE, if it were to partner with or become an MCO, provide those services to any insurer or self-insured employer, as well as others who may wish to utilize that to improve access for injured workers, while also addressing the cost issue that we are continuing to see. And Eva will talk about our current amendments that expand upon that.
The -1 amendment really working with the city of Portland, and I know Sam Hutchinson is online, I believe, and we'll talk about it too. But I want to touch on that one. Really requested by the city of Portland, and we're happy to do it to make sure that their fire and police, which is sort of outside comp but yet inside comp, can also access should there be ever a SAFE MCO. I want to maybe briefly also touch on the department's bill analysis on the -1 that says it's not clear whether this MCO, should there be a SAFE MCO, ever would be open to other insurers, and the answer is yes. That's actually what we're trying to do. It's in the bill language. The -1 is the proof that we're trying to make this as open as possible and have this be available for other people as well. It's our intent to create more resiliency and more capacity in the system for everybody. So that's the -1. The -2 is we've been working with our partners, with the nurse practitioners and the physicians associates to provide, in the logic of creating more access to care and timely access to care. And the -2 would grant attending physician status to MPs and PAs outside the MCO framework where that already exists as an option. I understand. So I'd be happy to take any questions, but I know there are folks that want to talk to the bill, to the amendments as well. So maybe Terry, we'll turn it over to.
Are there any questions for Evo before we move on to those that have signed up to testify, just on the presentation so far? Anyone on the committee? There are none. I think you presented good materials. Oh, Margaret. Oh, there you go. Hey, Margaret. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Now.
Well, no, that's okay. I apologize for being late, but I just wanted to say thank you to both Evo and Elaine. This is the goals of this bill are fascinating, and I want to thank you for bringing this forward.
Margaret.
Really interesting.
Thank you for that. All right, well, I see that the first person that has signed up to testify is Steve Bennett from the American Property Casualty Insurance Association. And I see a Bennett S on my screen on video, and I imagine that's who's about to speak.
That would be me himself. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this proposal. As said, my name is Steve Bennett, and I represent the American Property Casualty Institute, which are insurers that association, which are insurers that operate in the private market in Oregon as well as throughout the entire country. This SAFE proposal, we oppose it and we're somewhat concerned about it. We think it does not have the correct purpose or the correct motive. It would expand SAFE's authority to create subsidiaries, particularly subsidiaries that would allow them to do managed care services. Private insurers such as our members who write insurance throughout the nation are prohibited from, providing managed care services or medical services. So the bill would give SAFE one more advantage over private insurers in the Oregon work comp system. As you are probably aware, SAFE already has a multitude of competitive advantages that gives them what we would consider an unlevel playing field and unfair advantages competing in the Oregon work comp market. Through these advantages, SAFE now writes more than 50% of the market, including in their competitive advantages are, favorable federal and state tax treatment, favorable regulatory controls. They do not participate in the guarantee fund. They do not service the market of last resort. A lot of entities, quasi-public entities in other states to at least operate as the market of last resort, but SAFE does not do that. Also, the governor appoints their board. We believe that we're being impaired on an unlevel playing field in our attempts to compete in the Oregon work comp market. This proposal would just give SAFE one more major advantage. So we do not think SAFE needs any more competitive advantages, and what we're trying to do is create a level playing field. That alone is enough for us to oppose the bill. But thinking more holistically, if indeed there are problems with medical services in the Oregon work comp system, we would want to work with all stakeholders to improve a system that's a universal solution. If there are problems with access to care, we would want to, make it easier. If the reimbursements are too low, we would work to improve the reimbursement system. If there's red tape on medical disputes or the reimbursement procedures, we want to reduce that. We want high quality medical care in Oregon. And if there are problems, we would want to fix it, but we wouldn't want to fix it for an issue that only helps SAFE, but does not help other stakeholders in the system. Oregon is basically a three-part system. There's self-insured employers, there's employers who use private work comp insurers, and there's employers and entities that use SAFE. The proposal here, if there is a medical problem that needs solving, would only work as a solution to that 1/3 of the people who use SAFE. And we would be looking for a solution and are more than willing to work with all stakeholders to get a solution that would help employers who use private insurers, employers who use SAFE, and also employers who self-insure. We would adopt that as a much better fix for the Oregon work comp system than a proposal that just gives SAFE additional competitive advantages. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Are there any questions for, I see one question or hand raised from Scott Strickland.
Yeah, I just had a question for the gentleman that just presented. Is there a list of some information that's already been done? I know that we've received presentations from Majoris and others in the MCO market that there is concern about the provider access. And I was wondering if there's a list that some of the private insurers and other folks of the steps that are already being taken, because I haven't seen any yet. So I appreciate the commitment to working forward on that. But if there's some information of the steps that are actually being taken, I think that would be very helpful.
Thank you very much for the question. If there are, we certainly would work with all stakeholders. I do not have a document right now, but if you can present to me what, people have presented to you regarding the problems, then hopefully we can get back, but we would look towards working on a solution that would help all stakeholders.
Okay, thank you. Good question. Any other questions? I have one question, Mr. Bennett, is you mentioned the unfair advantage that SAFE would have, and this bill is targeted to SAFE. Would you consider it more agreeable if it allowed other insurers, those that you represent, to form an MCO themselves?
I'm not really sure that that's the solution right here. It might be better. I'd have to bring it back to my membership in the association, but it certainly wouldn't help self-insured employers. So it would have less of a competitive advantage, but I don't know if that's what we're looking for, if that's the solution. But I can't say right now because I have not brought it up to my workers' compensation committee at APCIO.
I guess sort of building on that, is there anything that you would see that could be adjusted within the bill that would make it more agreeable, or is just a wholesale opposition?
I doubt we would work on a bill that creates subsidiaries for SAFE. We have issues with SAFE's advantages that they have now, and we don't want them to even have the power to create subsidiaries, which also might allow them to work in other states, do other lines than work comp. So there certainly is not opposition to the idea of alleviating any healthcare access or healthcare problems, but there would be opposition inherently to allowing SAFE to create subsidiaries when it's already a quasi state entity acting with what we'll call an unlevel playing field.
And I know that Ryan Hearn has a question or comment.
Thank you, Co-Chair Strickland. I appreciate that. You know, as a self-insured employer, I guess I have a hard time seeing how this could negatively affect our position within the work comp field. Can you maybe expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, I believe as an employer with one company having more advantages than other company, it will make the system weaker as a whole. I mean, an employer has a choice between self-insuring SAFE or a private carrier. This would, because this would tip the scales in favor of SAFE, meaning all other options would become less desirable. And as you get less options, then SAFE would have more and more bargaining power. So in the long run, it would hurt self-insurers and employers generally because they would have less options.
Yeah. So essentially, while looking for our TPA to administer, SAFE would have, as you're putting it, an unfair advantage against other insurers in the state.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Good question. Any others? I guess I'd like yeah, thank you, Ivo, for raising your hand. I wanted to hear if SAFE had a response to any of the testimony given. I know there were a lot of statements made.
Yeah, I want to start maybe just correcting a misconception, I guess. We do, in fact, participate in the market of last resort in Oregon at the assigned risk pool. As a matter of fact, given our market position, we carry most of, or fund most of the costs of that assigned risk pool. So I'm not sure where the disadvantage or advantage there is for us. We do participate. I want to make that clear. I understand, Mr. Bennett, we've had that conversation before. Yes, we have a tax advantage. We are a public corporation. On the other hand, we have one line of insurance, one state, one line of insurance, which is the most risky business you can have as an insurance company. Most private insurers can hedge or can spread the risk in the business over multiple lines of insurance in multiple states and multiple regions. That's a huge advantage we don't have with that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I see that Mr. Bennett has his hand raised, so.
Yeah, no, I just want to agree with him. SAFE has approached us and we've talked to SAFE, so there's no surprise either from SAFE or me. We have talked this out, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to SAFE about this throughout the process, and we've given them our opinion. So there is no surprise attack on either side here. As far as just to clarify the residual market of last resort, I was not implying or suggesting that SAFE does not participate in the market of last resort. I was saying they do not act as the market of last resort. A lot of other states, I think there's about 18, the numbers changing sometimes. So where the quasi-state entity, however you want to call it, a state fund, whatever, but acts as the entire residual market, the entire market of last resort. That was the point I was trying to make, not that they're free of the residual market. They do participate just as all private insurers. But in many states, several states, the quasi-state thing acts as the entire residual market, which somewhat lessens or at least somewhat justifies the other advantages they get.
Thank you very much. All right, we have other people lined up to testify. Is there anything else, Mr. Bennett, or any questions for Mr. Bennett from the group? Well, hearing none, we will move on to next scheduled is Sam Hutchison. He is the director of the Bureau of Fire and Police Disability and Retirement. Mr. Hutchison, are you ready to give your testimony? Terry, have you seen him in the room? No? Okay, we have another person that is scheduled to testify, but they need to start at 10. So I will skip over that person. And I just received word that Alon Holston has signed up to testify for this bill, and he is in the room. Does that mean physically in the room?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Holston, we're ready to hear your testimony.
Thank you. Co-chairs, members of the committee, my name is Lon Winston. I'm a rise in opposition of this particular bill, 3374. Oregon's workers' compensation current law excludes insurance companies from owning managed care organizations to prevent conflicts of interest, ensuring that medical decisions for injured workers are based solely on their healthcare needs, not influenced by the financial interests of their insurance provider. Oregon's workers' compensation law excludes these companies to avoid these kind of conflicts because the injured worker is the damaged party here. They're the ones who get injured on the job. They're the ones that go see and seek medical assistance. And then they are enrolled in an MCO, or they get to have their opportunity just to see their physicians. Insurance companies who own MCOs would create incentives to reduce healthcare costs, which could lead to lower quality treatment for workers. Separating these roles seeks to ensure a more impartial system in which the healthcare providers prioritize employees' health needs without cost-cutting pressures driven by insurers. We protect patient care by prohibiting insurance companies from owning MCOs. The law aims to safeguard the quality of the medical care to injured workers by preventing situations where insurance companies might incentivize cost-cutting measures that could compromise treatment quality. Now, I'm not accusing anybody here, but there is these tendencies, and we all know what it is, to make sure that we are cost-effective in everything we do in the workers' compensation system. Whether it's pure premium costs, whether it's treatment costs, or whatever the case may be, but we don't want to incentivize it. Independent decision making is separation ensures that the MCO responsible for managing a worker's medical care can make independent decisions about treatment options without being influenced by the worker's insurance company. Promoting transparency. By preventing insurance companies from directly controlling MCO, the law promotes transparency in pricing and treatment options, allowing for easier comparison and selection of healthcare providers. So when we talk about this bill, I took a look at this bill and I didn't get a lot of the -1s in it. I just pulled what I had off the internet. And it says here, the state accident insurance fund would like to use House bill as a vehicle to create their own MCO. Well, that's great. It says in creating this MCO, they wish to acquire, lease, rent, own, and manage real property, construct, equip, and furnish buildings or other structures necessary to accommodate the MCO's needs. Now, for me, Safe Corporation is a semi-quasi public-private organization. What would that make the MCO? Would it be also public-private, or would it be standalone? Now, Safe Corporation would certainly like to insure us with the proper safeguards that would allow this entity to stand by itself without influence from the parent company. The firewall between the company and the MCO says that they will have a board. And this board selection process, when I looked at it, was a little alarming to me. You would have one member from labor, one from management, and 3 members recommended by SAFE. Now, I have to ask you, at MLAC, when you have a vote, you have your management side and you have your labor side. If you have a tie vote, what happens? The issue dies. That's Robert's Rules of Order. You would not have that situation here on this particular board. Whatever board that the 3 members from the accident insurance fund would outvote your labor member and your management member on every issue. And they'd be selected by the parent organization. So when we talk about whether or not these folks are going to be actually independent, they have some language in there that talks about pecuniary and whether or not they have incidental interest, and it must be disclosed before they're selected to be on this board. Well, that's great, except that in page 3, line 13 of the bill, a member of the board of directors is entitled to compensation and expenses to be provided under ORS 292.495. That would include a per diem. Who's paying that per diem? Is it the state? Is it safe? Because if it's a state, then we would probably have to say that they're a private, quasi-public institution at that point. But it's not clear in the bill. When we go on, it says that SAFE would be allowed to acquire an MCO. Now, we don't have a lot of MCOs in this state. There's a reason for that. They struggle at different times. Certainly their pockets aren't real deep. We've lost one in Portland on December 1st. There is some other MCOs that are struggling. Majoris is the #1 right now, and they have a pretty good market share around the state, but we really don't have enough MCOs for competition, and that's true. But if you were to consolidate this farther by acquiring one, what does that leave us with in the state for MCOs? It says here, the ability of recruiting and training physicians, and I've heard a lot about this particular subject. I don't see anything wrong with training physicians on how to work and deal with the workers' comp system. However, that could be done currently without any type of acquiring an MCO. Certainly the insurance companies, if they wanted to streamline some of the stuff the medical providers were doing and keeping them within the fold, so to speak, then why aren't we doing that currently? And Vern, you'll remember back in the day when we sat and said, gee whiz, we needed more providers for the work comp system. And I don't remember exactly what your bill number was, but we all sat down and had a big discussion on who we were letting in the door to be providers under workers' comp. We decided at that time, since we needed more providers, let's kick down the door and let everybody in. That meant chiropractors, naturopaths, that meant podiatrists. There was everybody that was out there, including NPs, that we brought into the system to try to solve this problem of having a lack of providers and having this long duration length time trying to get appointments with physicians. Oh, okay, sorry, people. So anyhow, we found that didn't work. Eastern Oregon and the whole United States has the same problem as we have over here and have within the system. This isn't going to be easily solved. It's going to take all of us to work to try to make this work. With the advent of telehealth, we are seeing a tendency to see more patient-doctor relationships being conducted through telehealth, as well as what we're doing here today. Now, telehealth is a great thing, except under Oregon law, we got a problem that we don't have currently, and we're working on that over at MAC. And the department is trying to make sure that a physician sees his patient within a reasonable amount of time. You could have physicians anywhere in the United States, or the world for that matter, sign a contract with the MCO, be trained in the healing arts, be licensed in whatever country that they're at, and we could have them working with our MCOs, signing a contract with them, and then working with injured workers right here in Oregon. Is that what we really want in Oregon, or do we want local control? Now, having local control and not enough doctors is a problem. And we still haven't solved that problem, whether we've thrown money at it, whether we open the door and let more providers in, we still haven't accomplished the mission. And I don't see where this bill is going to do that for us. There's no silver bullet here. So when I look, I looked at several portions in the bill. One of them was dispute resolution. I don't see any due process besides ending inside of an MCO for any type of dispute resolution for physicians, whether it's for treatment, whether it's for peer review, quality assurance, or service utilization. I think that's a failure in this bill, because if you don't have a due process that takes you to the director or into the courts, you really don't have a due process. So we talk about the audit that's going to be done, and the audit is done before April 15th of every year. That's right in the middle of session every year. That creates some problems. I mean, if you're doing an audit, there's a lot of things going on. How many bills are you going to address today right here at MLAC? The department has to deal with those bills in the process. So when I look at audits being done, how deep is the director going to be allowed to get into the data he needs to actually do an audit for SAFE in the MCO to make sure that the firewall's intact? I don't know. It's unclear in the bill. We don't know how far this goes. We don't have due process. So I'm opposed to the bill, but I appreciate SAFE bringing the issue forward. I mean, we really need to talk about this stuff. And I appreciate the fact that SAFE would pay for the audit, but that still doesn't get us where we need to be. So I'm willing to answer any questions that folks may have.
Thank you, Mr. Holston. Are there any questions from the caucus members? I just have one question is, you mentioned several things that you are opposed to, very, very detailed. Thank you for that. One of them was about the governance and the composition of the board. Would that be something, if that changed, you would, or anything else, would cause you to support this bill? Is there anything in there that would change your opposition to support?
I'm open to just about anything, as long as you have the firewall and the audits in place, as well as some kind of due process that actually works in here. I mean, there's several things you would have to change in the bill before I could support it. But nobody's bothered to ask me what that would be. I've just been here testifying. And I know that these folks over here say would talk to me at any time if they had a chance. So I appreciate that. So.
Okay, well, thank you.
To answer your question. Yeah, as long as I would need some safeguards.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. Thank you very much for your testimony and your thoughtful consideration of this bill. We have Mr. Sam Hutchison, the Director of the Bureau of Fire and Police Disability and Retirement, has entered the physical location and is ready to testify. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. As he said, I'm Sam Hutchison, Director of the City of Portland's Fire, Police, Disability, and Retirement Bureau. I'll use the acronym FPDR just to keep that short throughout the discussion. I want to thank you, Co-Chair Strickland and Priest, and the rest of the committee for having me here to testify on the -1 amendment to 3374. So my focus, you also see it on the -2 amendment, but I'm going to just address the -1. First, I want to give you some background on FPDR and explain why I'm in front of you. The City of Portland firefighters and police officers are covered for disability under the Fire Police Disability and Retirement Plan as defined in the City of Portland's Charter, Chapter 5. Therefore, under ORS 656027 sub 6, the firefighters and police officers of Portland are considered non-subject workers and are not covered by the state workers' compensation system. Since the FPDR plan is independent of the state workers' compensation system, FPDR is not subject to any provisions of ORS 656 unless explicitly stated in statute. An example is the PTSD presumptions covers us also. So FPDR contracts with managed care organizations to provide managed healthcare services for our enrolled members and disabled members. FPDR requires all MCOs that we use to be certified by the Oregon Workers Compensation Division. And presently, we have MCO contracts with Providence Health Plan, Kaiser Foundation Health Plan of the Northwest, and Majoris Health Systems of Oregon. All are certified by the Workers Compensation Division. SAFE has proposed the bill 3374 that will allow SAFE to form or acquire a subsidiary corporation to provide managed care services to injured workers. FPDR is concerned that if SAFE enters the MCO market, it will dominate the market. They cover, what, 2/3 roughly of all the employees and employers in the state. So this would give a very small wedge of the market to the MCOs that we use today. And so we get concerned with that they could not see the margins they need and leave the MCO area. We had MHN left, a couple of years ago. That was pretty hard on us to go out and get some additional, we had to get Majoris involved with us at that time. And, having fewer MCOs for us would be detrimental because it would be higher cost for us, and our members would have fewer physicians or healthcare practitioners available for their use. So FPDR is met with SAFE because we wanted to know if SAFE would contract their services with us should they create an MCO. And if we could, this would alleviate most of our concerns about them dominating the MCO market. So like I said, we met with SAFE and they said their intention was never to not allow organizations to contract with it. Specifically, the proposed bill has under Section 1, Part 5, Sub B, and I think it's located at the top of page 2 of the original bill. It says SAFE may authorize self-insured employers or other insurers to use such managed care services on such terms as the State Accident Insurance Fund Corporation deems reasonable. Sort of simple, they can form agreements or contracts with those insurers. This wording would again allow self-insured employers and insurers who are part of the Oregon Workers Compensation System to use SAFE's MCO, if everybody agrees with it. Since FPDR is not part of the Oregon Workers Compensation, we don't meet the definition of self-insured employer, and we don't meet under the ORS's the definition of an insurer. So that leaves us out of the wording that is in the bill. So we proposed the amendment -1. We worked with SAFE to come up with the wording that would allow SAFE to contract their MCO services with FPDR. So if you look on the -1 amendment, it has look under Part B, sub a large capital C. There it says cities. SAFE can contract with cities that provide by ordinance or charter a disability or retirement for firefighters and police officers that is not subject to this chapter. That's code word for FPDR. That's what they've used in the other statutes. So this allows FPDR to enter or negotiate a contract for SAFE should they have an MCO. Again, like I said before, this assures that we will have enough healthcare providers available for our members and help us keep our costs down as all the MCOs do. So I'm urging support for the -1 amendment.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Hutchinson. Is there any comments or questions from the caucus? All right, well, thank you for your testimony and we'll register your support. We do have a speaker that has a limited window of opportunity, but before we move on to that, I wanted to offer SAFE the opportunity to provide feedback or commentary on the last two testimonies.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Sam and City of Portland. We were glad to work with them on this. I think both Sam and Lon, and here's the point where we agree with Lon, right? Mentioned the fact there's not enough MCOs in Oregon. I mean, there is a capacity issue and a resilience issue, and our bill is trying to address it. We're not trying to dominate the market. We're just trying to add another choice here in the first place. I did want to maybe correct Lon's description of SAFE as a quasi-public-private. We are 100% public. We are a public corporation created by statute. Our board is appointed by the governor. We are here because we are 100% public, and we have to get this legislature to weigh in changing our statute. So I just want to make sure to clarify that point. It's also the point that Mr. Bennett raised before. It's the reason why our tax treatment is different. So 100% public. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification. All right, well, I believe I see Meg and a video up. So Meg Portwood is a rural nurse practitioner and has signed up to testify. Thank you for being here today.
You bet. I'm Meg Portwood. I'm a family nurse practitioner in Lincoln City, Oregon at Coastal Health Practitioners. We are a rural health clinic and have been here since 1975. And I have been doing workers' comp care since 1975 and have been involved with the different changes throughout the years. I think the last time I testified was in 2012. And appreciated the changes that were made to get nurse practitioners able to see our rural residents and extended the time that we're able to see them. And I'm now testifying at the request of the Oregon Nurses Association to support House Bill 3374 and the amendments, which appear to improve and extend privileges to full practice for nurse practitioners. We are independently licensed and practice independently. And our goal, as always, is to see, well, all our patients, but the injured workers in a timely fashion and provide safe, adequate care with appropriate referrals and ongoing follow-up. I remember a few years ago going to a workers' compensation meeting with employers and providers, and our goal is to get the worker back as soon as possible, even if it meant a limited capacity, and working with the employer to make that happen. And we have always supported that issue. We'll get folks referred to rehabilitation, physical therapy, occupational therapy, or other specialists as needed. And our goal long-term is to get the employee back to their pre-injury status, able to work full-time in their capacity. And being able to have full practice with no time limits is very important to our folks who oftentimes are not able to travel distances or have someone else drive them if they're incapacitated long distances for care. So we would request ability to provide the full practice and no time limits and being involved with the MCOs as required.
Well, thank you very much for that testimony. Are there any questions? I see Sarah Duckwall has raised her hand.
Thank you very much, Meg. We appreciate your testimony. Can you clarify what you mean by no time limits?
Well, when we first started seeing workers' comp people, we were restricted to 3 months. And now we've got 180 days, we've got up to 6 months. But sometimes that person is not completely ready to return at 6 months, and maybe they need 7 or 8 months. And so currently the two restrictions are after the 6 months, we have to refer the person to another provider that they may or may not know for ongoing care. We also are restricted in the ability to sign off on after 6 months of when we can get that worker back to work. And sometimes that's difficult. I mean, if it's a patient we've been seeing in our clinic for years and we know them well, we would like to be able to carry on with our care until the injury is resolved or appropriate specialty has taken over their care.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other comments or questions? All right, Mr. Simple.
Good morning, Keith Simple, Oregon Trial Lawyers Association. I'm sorry I'm a little late to the show here. I didn't catch the time shift in the meeting. We think it's good to expand the full access to NPs and PAs. You know, quite frankly, there is a real concern about access to care. And another concern is, you know, it's kind of increasingly difficult as the time that different providers can provide care changes. It makes it very difficult for the worker when we talk about the time limits. I mean, there's actually a spreadsheet chart to tell the worker who they can treat with, how long they can treat with, what functions that doctor can perform. Sometimes, you know, for example, a PA can't do a closing exam. So the worker, you know, our clients tell us all the time, we just do what we're told. This doctor sends us to that doctor, sends us to the doctor. If no one tells us that the time limit is running out, we don't have that spreadsheet taped to our kitchen refrigerator. I mean, it's just very difficult for the worker to go where they're supposed to go, do what they're supposed to do, and then suddenly get a letter from the MCO or the provider saying, you need to find a new doctor and you need to do it fast. And their work restrictions and all those things are hanging in the balance. So, you know, whatever we can do to kind of streamline that for the workers so they're not kind of caught out there and having to really figure out this complexity of who they can treat with when, I think would be helpful, especially in the more remote areas where there's just fewer MDs that can do this work. So I think that is a good thing to look at and move forward on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Anything else for Ms. Portwood? Or I know you had a limited window of opportunity. I'm glad we were able to get you in.
You bet.
Time. I know you're busy.
Back to normal, back to patient care.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you for participating in our meeting today.
You bet.
All right, well, that is the last of the scheduled testimony on House Bill 3374. Is there anyone else before we move on to the next topic that has any comments, questions? I see one hand raised from Sedgwick, Thais Lomax. I hope I said that right.
Very close. Thais Lomax with Sedgwick. Thank you. I just, on behalf of Sedgwick, wanted to express our concerns that are in line with Mr. Bennett's, with SAFE being in charge of an MCO and or taking over one of the current MCOs. I have, just for your knowledge, been directly managing workers' comp claims, either as an adjuster or in my current role as a supervisor for over 25 years now in Oregon. My team currently handles the state of Oregon programs, including non-complying employers, bankrupt and decertified coverages. If SAFE is allowed to expand to create their own MCO or to take over another MCO, that will severely limit our options for utilizing MCOs. I'll be honest, other third-party administrators and insurers are likely not to hire SAFE, who is their direct competitor in the market, to act as an MCO. As the rules currently stand, adjusters within the state of Oregon are directly barred from directing care. So for injured workers who are not enrolled in MCOs, their choice of providers is 100% up to them and or what is available in their area. those that are enrolled in MCOs then are limited to that list of contracted providers. I think we all agree we need more providers who are willing and able to work within Oregon's rules for medical care, reporting, impairment rating, authorization. I don't know of anyone who would disagree with the fact that we really do need more providers, but I don't think that safe handling a managed care organization and trying to do additional recruitment is the right route to go to get there. I would agree with earlier testimony that a solution across the state would be great. I just don't believe that this current proposal is the one.
Well, thank you for that testimony and raising your hand. Are there any comments or questions? The caucus for Ms. Lomax? Well, seeing none, I guess I've asked everyone that's testified in opposition, is there anything in the bill, Ms. Lomax, that would cause you to support it? If there was a change in some aspect of it?
We'd have to read through it again. It was more of a fine-tooth comb, but there is definitely concern both with SAFE's potential being able to manage their own MCO while other administrators and insurers are not allowed to do the same. And that is one of the primaries. I also, I mean, frankly, from my own experience in handling a number of, I don't think there's an industry in the state of Oregon that I have not touched myself as an adjuster or as a supervisor currently. MCOs are usually not expansive when it comes to access to care in what we have seen. Direction of care, yes, it's honestly the only way that we can have any say in saying you must see Dr. X, Y, or Z, or you cannot see Dr. 1, 2, or 3 because of that MCO panel. But when it comes to actual expansion of options for injured workers, that is not the reality of what we have actually seen.
I see a hand raised from Sarah Rockwell.
Thank you very much. Are you interested in starting your own MCO at Sedgwick?
I don't know. I'd have to talk with our other national managed care people about that. I don't know that they've looked at that as an option right now.
Of someone having a subsidiary with an MCO, but you're not. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if you don't want to start one yourself or be included in then I'm not sure I understand why the opposition.
The opposition is, well, take the example of Majoris, who has a fairly large market share of MCO enrolled claims currently. If SAFE were to start their own MCO, Majoris will lose the majority of their current business. And
are you talking on behalf of Majoris now? Or are you talking for
No,
Majoris
I'm talking on behalf of insurers and employers who are currently contracted with MCOs within the state of Oregon. So, you know, we have employers who we handle claims for that contract with Providence, who contract with Kaiser, and some who contract with Majoris. There's also a large pool who do not contract with any of the MCOs. If Majoris were to no longer do business, that leaves only Kaiser and Providence, and the option to then, frankly, work with our direct competitor to hire them and their managed care organization, or to have no more MCO losing those options is, I don't think, a great option for anyone right now. But we would have to do more research and further look at other options to create an MCO in competitive. I honestly don't know. But I do know that we do a lot of do a lot of work with Majoris. But if Majoris were to be purchased by SAFE, or to no longer be able to do business because they have lost their business to this new group that SAFE creates, that would be very detrimental to all of those non-SAFE insured groups.
Thank you.
You know, I had a follow-up question. You know, Ms. Lomax, you mentioned Sedgwick is a large, national company. And you mentioned your managed care folks. You wanted to talk to them. Does Sedgwick operate managed care organizations in other states?
We have an ancillary care network that does work with field nurses, telephonic nurses, transportation. In some states, they do diagnostic coordination. And in states where direction of care or the insurer being allowed to be involved in those things, they do a number of those things that an MCO would do in Oregon. They do very, very little touch in Oregon for us because Oregon's rules disallow that.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Absolutely.
I would also be interested in hearing what your organization would be, how they would think about operating in the state, since access to care is so important. So
access to care is absolutely important. I don't know anyone who disagree.
Yeah. I see another hand raised. It's Ryan Hearn.
Thank you, co-chair. Appreciate that. I think just more of a comment here. I think there's a lot of focus right now on the fact that, allowing SAFE to have the MCO would give them an unfair advantage. I just kind of want to give a self-insurer perspective here. When we're evaluating for a TPA to contract with to handle our claims, the MCO piece is a very small piece of what the bigger picture of what we're evaluating when it comes to picking out a TPA. We don't use SAFE as our TPA service here at Roseburg. And that's for, reasons outside of having an MCO. I just kind of want to refocus that competitive edge. An MCO is going to give them a little something else to talk about, but that's not going to be the sole thing that employers are looking for. Claim management, handling, those kind of things are really what we're looking for when picking a TPA. So just wanted to throw that out there for some perspective for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you very much. That's good perspective. Sarah Duckwall has been inspired by your comment.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to speak one more time on this. I'm curious, are the current MCOs required to stay in Oregon, or could they leave on their own volition?
Hope you're not asking me because I don't know.
I'm asking.
I'm
I'm asking anyone, because if they're not required to stay here, I'm not sure that argument.
Sarah, maybe if I can provide an answer or context. When MCOs were created by the Mahoney Hall reform some 35 years ago, there were actually is a longer list of MCOs that existed at any one point. The department has a list on their website, and I'm sure they can email that out. It has shrunk down. At some point, OHSU had an MCO. It has shrunk down to now 3. We had a 4th one, Caremark, and I think Lon mentioned it too. They left the market, ceased operations December 1st a year ago. We had about 1,200 claims enrolled with them at that point, and we struggled to get about 150 enrolled in other MCOs. I'll say there is a capacity issue, and this is where we are here generally. And should another leave, it's up to them. We work really well with Kaiser and with Providence and with Majoris. We are just trying to do a 4th option here. If that answers your question, Sarah.
I think to the question to Elaine Schooler with Safe Corporation, MCOs are not required to be in operation. They do have rules regarding a change if they decide to cease operations, as Caremark did, that they have to provide notice to the client insurers or self-insurers that they have contracts with and to the division, but they're not required to continue their operations in Oregon indefinitely after an MCO has been formed.
And what's the timeline? 60 days?
It's either 30 or 60 days. I think it was 30 days from the date the notice is sent that they cease their operations in the case of Caremark.
So there very well could be other situations that could drive MCOs out of the market that have nothing to do with what's on the table. So I just want to, just flag that MCOs aren't required to be here, and we could be down to one very soon.
And Sam Hutchison from FPDR. One of our concerns too is Caremark was part of the legacy health system, and they're the ones that jettisoned it due to cost cuts. I'll be honest with you, I'm very concerned about Providence. They've outsourced all their labs, they've outsourced all their home health and care. Their physical therapy has been reduced. They're looking to cost cut. They've got a big impact from the nurses' strike and the doctor's strike. So we get nervous that Providence at some point will do a strong cost benefit analysis of keeping their MCO active. Because again, Legacy made the decision it was not, so Caremark left. So that's something that's concerning us. And we're thinking if SAFE came into the market and therefore the available market shrunk, you may see somebody like Providence say, that really cuts into our bottom line. We're going to go ahead and jettison that MCO. So that's why we got and talked with SAFE to say, hey, look, we need to be able to contract with you if these other MCOs leave when SAFE, their MCO goes online.
Good discussion. Anything else? Any other testimony? Any other questions, comments? I guess just one question for the SAFE team. You know, as the sponsors of this bill, you said you didn't seek a vote today. Did you get the information you need to proceed and come back? Is there anything else you need from this committee?
No, we'll be, thank you, Mr. Chair. We appreciate the discussion. I appreciate hearing even from those, and I want to be clear to say that even from those who don't agree with us, it's helpful for us to kind of assess. We will be back here shortly. There's a couple of changes to the -2 that we already have flagged internally, mostly technical changes. And there seems to be an omission of the phrase that the job held at the time of injury on page 10, lines 3 and 4. And so there's a couple of changes that we will request. The department also flagged a couple of things. So we'll be back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. It was a good discussion. And I will go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. And I'm actually going to move backwards. I saw Keith Semple give some commentary on the last bill, and I know that he has an update on House Bill 2799, which is one of the bills waiting on amendments, and I understand he has an update.
Thank you, Chair Priest, members of the committee. We have been having a lot of discussions with the stakeholders, and especially SAFE Corporation, who has been communicating with the other defense stakeholders about House Bill 2799 to expand cost reimbursement for injured workers who are successful in workers' comp disputes. There's been a lot of back and forth, and the language has been exchanged several times. So I apologize that you probably don't have the most recent language in front of you because we have been discussing it so much. What we've done since our first presentation is to list out the disputes that this would apply to, instead of saying that it would apply to all disputes involving denials of benefits or all disputes where attorney fees would be available. We've specifically provided a list of the disputes we would want this to apply to. We also have been discussing the soft cap amount, to where you would have to show extraordinary circumstances to get a reimbursement beyond that. So there's been a lot of discussion also on that number since we first proposed this. We are trying to get something nailed down in terms of final language that we could submit to legislative council and get something that's more permanent and more solid in writing. So we're working to put that together, and we really appreciate what the work of the other stakeholders and what we've been able to achieve with this discussion. We appreciate the process. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much for the update. But we look forward to getting that amendment, and thank you for working together. Any questions or comments from Mr. Simple? All right, seeing none, I did just get a text that going back again, we changed our time, so now people have shown up a little bit late. Connie Welchel from it has an update on Senate Bill 991, another bill waiting on an amendment.
Okay, thank you. I didn't realize I was going to be speaking today. They are working on an amendment. I do not have any update actually because it's still being worked on.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I got a text, so I apologize for putting you on the spot, but you handled it well.
Thank you.
Did anybody have any questions for her? Well, okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for that update and your work. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, and that is the Senate Bill 606, and we have Odalise Aguilar from AXME, political coordinator, to give us a report.
Hi. Oh, can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
Yes, thanks for having me, again, co-chair. Senate Bill 606. Just wanted to highlight some data I think that was asked when we presented the bill a couple of weeks ago. Thank you. I want to say thank you to SAFE for providing the information. I think that went out a couple of days ago if you all haven't received it. So it shows the small number of claims that have been filed, and I'm actually going to put Eva on the spot if that's okay to walk through the data just quickly, since they're the ones who put it together. But in the table you can see the total amount of claims for both the state hospital and the stabilization and crisis unit.
That's a good idea. Evo, are you ready? The star of the day. Do you mind presenting that, or?
Absolutely, Mr. Co-Chair. Happy to. Maybe so. I hope you all have the sheet in front of you. What we did is we did a 5-year look back, mostly because we have to go claim by claim kind of to do that. So 5 years seemed like a good amount. We broke it up between the Oregon State Hospital and the SACU, which is a Department of Health and Human Services. And we distinguish between original and new and omitted claims. For those of you who don't do work comp, original would be if a claim is filed with a PTSD claim top. New and omitted would be usually, or in a lot of these cases, and you see the struck by person column there too, something happens, a worker gets injured, the injury gets filed as a claim, and then in an additional kind of another injury, if you will, is then the stress claim. That will be the new or omitted category in there. You see the numbers there. They are really over the total numbers. Well, they're lower than I guess we would have thought in some ways over the 5 years, but that's in the eye of the beholder. I want to point out the difference between accepted and denied. A lot of the denied claims is not that these were stress claims. A lot of them did not qualify under PTSD or acute stress disorder in the first place, and they were denied. Here's where presumption would not have made a difference either which way. There is potentially a couple of claims in there where presumption would have made a difference, but generally speaking, for the most part, the denied claims here wouldn't have qualified under the presumption either. Maybe this is a good time to also correct, and media coverage is media coverage, and I've been doing this long enough to know you can never control what the media writes. But in the first one, there were a couple of media stories on 606 when it was first heard in the Senate committee. where it said that workers cannot file PTSD claims or acute stress claims currently. That is not true. Obviously, you can file a stress claim if you have it. So we focused on, I should also say this, we focused on PTSD and acute stress disorder because these are the two mental health claims that fall under the presumption. There are more mental health claims, obviously, that can be filed, but these are the two that fall under presumption. So we thought this is the most apples to apples, or the right apples to the right oranges comparison, I guess, if you will. Happy to answer any other questions, but.
Thank you for that presentation. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Trummer or Ms. Aguilar? Ryan Hurd.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Co-Chair. I just wanted to say thank you for providing this data, Ivo. I think it's really insightful. I agree that, you know, just because we see denied claim there doesn't mean that somebody had a mental stress claim or mental stress issue and that was denied. You know, there is, you know, more detail in that data, but just seeing these numbers overall is really nice to see. So I appreciate SAFE's efforts to put that together.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the group? I have one follow-up question. Ivo, I heard you say that there were just one or two claims that would have been impacted by this bill. Could you indicate, you know, why they were denied?
No, I would have to go deep, or somebody else who actually knows how to read these claims would have to go deep into the claims file. Maybe the best way to think about it is this way, right? If you statute defines PTSD according to the DSM-5, the 5th edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, and that's defined, there's a certain set of stressors, right? That's the technical term that cause PTSD. Exposure or threat of physical violence, sexual abuse, death, right? There's a limited number of stressors that will qualify PTSD. Where a presumption would make a difference is if the stressor is really happening in your personal life, but then also something happens at work, then a presumption would still say it is a work cause, even though most of the stresses are in your personal life. And it will be up to the employer or the insurer, I guess, but the employer in the statute to then rebut and say why it was not caused by work. That's really sort of that difference. In a couple of the claims, just reading the kind of the top lines, that would have been the question that would have been asked. And that's why I'm saying it would depend on the details of the claims. I wouldn't say none of these would have been impacted by presumption. That's why I say maybe one or two could have been impacted. But it's because of that sort of, would there have been a case made that it was not at all caused by work? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. It seems pretty narrow. Is there, Ms. Aguilar, why is presumption being proposed? It seems as though most claims are being approved.
Yes, thank you, Co-Chair. I think this, the sentiment around and stigma around accessing mental health is really big, especially in public safety and like other non-first responders. So accessing just any mental health services, especially through the workers' comp system, is something that a lot of workers struggle with. It just generally, a lot of claims are just also not getting filed because they don't, you know, they don't feel like they're really going to access any support. Of course, we know that there's a system that's in place that's intended to work for these people, but I think there's just a general misconception that is living where workers do not, you know, feel that if they are called out, for example, in the bill, that they cannot access. So I think that's where the sentiment comes of like, you know, they cannot access any mental health supports. And so the numbers here are really small, and over the last 5 years, some people have been successful, and like, you know, that's great. I would also just say that the folks that are already in the presumption, the population that they help support and deal with out in the public are also the same people that are are now at the Oregon State Hospital or at the Stabilization and Crisis Unit. And that's not to criminalize or anything like that. That's for someone that's in psychosis. But I think when someone is not regulated, they can cause harm to themselves and others. And unfortunately, there are workers that are just at the wrong place at the wrong time, and maybe just like lack general staffing that leads to unsafe conditions. And that's really where the desire, I think, for them to be added into the presumption exists, where if this was in there, it would make it so that they would feel that they're really being supported and just have that extra access to care when they need it.
Thank you for that. I see a couple of hands are raised. I'll call them in order. Sarah Duckwall, I think, went first.
Thank you, Co-Chair Priest. I want to reference WCD's memo on page 2. It's talking about the accepted mental health claims from 2015 to 2024. And those non-first responder claims have gone up, exponentially more so than the first responder claims. So I'm going to challenge or question the stigma in the non-first responder claims if they are increasing at a larger rate than the first responder claims. So can you help me understand that with the data?
Yes. I don't know what other non-first responder workers exactly who is filing. I can only speak to the workers that we represent, specifically the state hospital in SACU, and we also have behavioral health folks. I think that because again, a lot of those people are now in care settings, like a behavioral health secure residential facility, for example. I know that even just general insurance costs are going up because the risk is so high, and because there's a lot that's happening at those facilities. So I imagine that is where the claims are, but I can't speak to where those are coming from because I don't represent those workers.
No, I understand, but the accepted mental health claims have gone up.
I think
steadily
people
from
are
2015 to today's 2024. So it seems that the stigma is not as great as it once was. So maybe we're reversing that stigma.
I think, Chair and members of the committee, what I would say is I think a lot of people now that are non-first responders, again, are working at those facilities, and people are in those places are sicker. And so I think, yes, I think that more people are accessing mental health services, but the general, I think, sentiment of accessing any type of care through workers' comp or any accessing any mental health care, it has been a stigma for a long time, and I'm glad actually that we're moving away from it, and I'm glad that people are accessing care. So I think that actually those numbers are trending in the way that we want to, so that people can deal with those mental health challenges and get back to work or whatever it may be, whether it's in their personal or work life.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll turn it to Ryan Hearn, who's next.
Thank you, Chair.
Another person.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. Just more of a comment, and kind of on the same line as Sarah. It sounds like more or less why the presumption, and maybe more of an information campaign is needed here to let these workers know that they have mental health access through the workers' comp system. But jumping to a presumption, I think, is a stretch too far. And maybe there's other avenues, such as the informational campaign, that could kind of address the same issue. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Did you have a reply at all, or should I go on to the next item?
Co-chair, members of the committee, I think a general education campaign is needed, not just for this, I think in general, for all mental health supports, and again, workers' comp. We hear from our members all the time. I think we did a survey a couple of months ago, and a lot of those workers do not feel And that's not to say that there aren't any efforts being put in already from either employers or insurance companies. That, you know, that's not to say that, but I think what workers are feeling on the ground is that they're not feeling supported and they're feeling unsafe and unheard. And so this is really a response to them and especially those, you know, state workers who dedicate their lives to supporting the most vulnerable individuals. So beyond that, I think yes, we do need to have more education.
Thank you for that. All right, Scott Strickland has a comment or a question.
Yeah, probably mostly just a comment. I think having performed work, when I was in the field, I did construction, property management, maintenance, and remodeling work in a lot of these types of facilities that are absolutely critically important, providing housing and supportive services to folks living with severe and persistent mental illness and other issues. We had up to secured facilities. I don't think quite state hospital level or SACU, but close to that, that we provided property management, you know, remodeling, all kinds of stuff. So we were bringing tools into these facilities too and working around these folks and line staff, and having personally seen attacks on staff and the kind of abuse and really, really hideous conditions that folks work in, and seeing the staffing crisis there as well. I think one of the things that we talk about when we talk about sort of the policy perspective of presumption is the idea that we may have incomplete data. I mean, we're always going to have incomplete data on everything because there's perspectives that won't be included. But then in terms of addressing the need for this kind of work to continue to be performed until we can get to the point in society where we can have, you know, a lot more, a much more enlightened perspective of the importance of mental health. That a presumption, especially affecting only a few folks, can be very helpful in advancing that. And having personally seen a lot of people just wash out of these positions instead of because they don't want to file a claim, they don't want to be working there anymore, they just want to run away from that situation because of the really horrific conditions that they face a lot of times, I think is very worthy of discussion and continuing to investigate. I think I'm very sympathetic to this bill, supportive. I understand that there's still some questions about some additional data, and maybe if we can get some more input. I know that there was, I think, supportive testimony submitted back from February that sort of talked about some of these issues, but just personally having experienced this and witnessing violence on line staff, threats of violence and attacks on coworkers within the maintenance department, violence and attacks, self-harm, all kinds of stuff like that, the conditions too, without getting too extreme, feces and other bodily fluids all over the environments that you're working in. It's the work is critical and the folks that do it are heroes. And I think that understanding that there may just be a few of them that we're protecting and that would provide a safety net to ensure that this work is continuing to be done by folks is worthy of discussion. So I just wanted to kind of frame that out there. It sounds like there's a couple different perspectives that we still need, but to kind of push that forward and say that I hear you and I hear those folks.
Thank you for that comment. It is very important work. I agree totally.
Co-chair, we have a hand up in the room, Sarah Merrick.
Okay. Oh, hi, Sarah.
Hello. I would also like to comment, and you know, I think it's I don't know that I want to use the word dangerous, but I think when we make correlations or statements without data, it can be damaging as to why to guess the numbers may go up or go down. I think echoing Scott's, staffing levels make a difference. I too, you know, it made as a first responder and having taken care of those affected by assaults and whatnot in some of these facilities. I just think it's important to remember that there's much more that goes into it. First responders also were stigmatized, felt it was a stigmatized thing many years ago. This presumption bill has made a difference to those lives as an avenue back to work as well. It's not always an avenue out of work. And so having the care and support without having to fight in the middle of a mental health crisis is important. And I just think before we make statements about why we see numbers rise, we should have some data that backs it as to whether there is a more, for other workers as well, is there more violence in general that help in workplaces, many, not just certain workplaces, but all workplaces. The understaffing, the mental toll that takes on that when issues like assaults occur. And so I think we need to take care in the words we use when we're looking at the whys of increased numbers or decreased numbers.
Thank you for that comment and perspective. It is important to hear. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Maybe, Mr. Co-Chair, if I may. Yeah, if I may, so SAFE is neutral on the bill formally. This is a group of workers that work for the state. The way we insure the state, it's on a retroactive or retro plan. The state bears the cost of the kind of the claim for the first 10 years. Generally speaking, the one thing I want to point out, no presumption, right? Treatment for us, the question to timely access to treatment and who can provide treatment is the real challenge that we see from the insurance and the claim side, right? Is to find the providers that can do this. And I don't know if the city of Portland sees similar things, right? That to us is the real challenge, is the access to medical or qualified mental health providers to provide treatment. Thank you.
Thank you for that perspective as well. Ms. Aguilar, did you have anything that you needed more from this committee? Were you seeking a vote or?
Co-chair members of the committee, I think not at this time. We hope to come back after maybe answering some of the questions that were raised and trying to get more data. So if that's okay, would like to come back. I will just note that one thing on the state hospital in the stabilization and crisis unit. The state hospital has been the most dangerous place to work at for the last couple of years in a report by DCBS. And also the stabilization and crisis unit is right up there in the secure residential facilities with other behavioral health settings. So the comment that a member made earlier is accurate. Those places are getting really dangerous to work. And so would love to continue having the conversation with you all and come back when we have further data.
Thank you very much. And I think you're next on our agenda. So I'll let you give your update on Senate Bill 705, and we have a -2 amendment. And I know we received something just shortly before this meeting.
Yes, what I sent was the co-chair was the updated one pager with the -2 language, which kind of just summarizes the -2 that was talked through a couple of weeks ago. I think since then we've received an NCCI analysis. So thank you to them for getting that back in a timely manner. I don't know if they're on the call, but it looks like the adjustment that was made was the total rate change, which I'm trying to pull up here. That is based on the -2.
I know it was emailed out to all of us. I don't know. Did you want it maybe displayed? Did you want to show us something on it?
I can. I believe Todd sent this to Terry. If you all didn't receive this, I do apologize.
Yes, it was emailed out, and we can't display things right now because of the security settings. We're gonna have to figure it out. Everything is on the MLAC website, though, if you go to the March 20th meeting. But I did email everything out.
Yeah, I did review the NCCI analysis, and I don't know, did you want to defer to maybe somebody from the NCCI to review it with us and talk about it in more detail?
Yeah, if they're on the call, I think the only thing that I would highlight that we were looking for was just the premium rate on page 3, I believe.
Yeah, I see Todd Johnson from NCCI has gone on camera. It's mute, but are you able to give us an update on this report that you've issued?
Morning, Co-Chair Prieston and members of the committee. Sure, I'm happy to give you the thumbnail of this report here. So we were asked to review this -2 amendment, and we completed the analysis on March 12 and distributed it accordingly. I think bottom line here, if you're interested in that, would be that our analysis reveals that overall, this would increase the workers' compensation system costs in Oregon by approximately 5.3%. And I'm going to refer that 5.3%, that is just the loss costs. NCCI is the licensed rating organization to support the workers' compensation loss costs that we file for the Division of Financial Regulations approval in August of each year. So loss costs are only those components of the final workers' compensation rate that deal with the loss-based expenses. Loss costs do not include taxes, licenses, fees, general expenses, production expenses, or any potential profit. So I just want to qualify when we say a 5.3 increase in loss costs, that's, the direct statutory benefits. That does not include other costs associated with the insurance carrier's premium.
Thank you for that. Are there questions or comments on that report from the caucus or? Ms. Aguilar, did you have any commentary on it? Do you agree with this report and this assessment?
Yeah, I think when we are talking about increased time loss benefits, it's kind of a no-brainer to expect that there are across the board slight increases. It's my understanding too that there are other folks in the room that have similar data points and have run numbers. So I'm going to phone a friend again, Evo, from SAFE.
Our MVP today, Evo.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we do have data. The final data, it took a little to get it all straightened out. I didn't email out yesterday. I'll be happy to email it out after this meeting to Terry to share with the MLAC members. The bottom line is, and not all that surprising, our numbers pretty much reflect NCCI's numbers as well. Now, we did it in our book of business, which has slight differences, right, in region and trends, but it's within a couple of tens of percentage points. We looked at also the impact on premiums, which it has a similar percentage impact in the end as the pure rate impact, right? In the same sort of percentage rate. We have it, and you will see that by industry. You'll see that it's pretty homogeneous across industries, with the one outlier in government where the impact is probably lower, but for various reasons. But it depends on the mix of, what is your loss cost rate in the first place? What is the type of work your employers do? And what's the mix of workers below and above the state average weekly wage, right? And how that settles. But you'll see all that. But the bottom line is our numbers are very similar.
Well, that's good to know. Any other discussion on this bill? Any other testimony? I see a hand raised from Scott Strickland.
If we could get, I know that there was a chart that I found at one point that had the pure premium rate changes over time, over the past 20 plus years. Looking at one that goes back to 2015 that I found on the DCBS website, it seems like there was a 3.2 2% premium reduction in 25, a 6.7% reduction in 24, a 3.2 reduction in 23, 5.8 reduction in 22, 5.6 reduction in 21, an 8.4 reduction in 2020, a 9.7 reduction in 2019, a 14% reduction in 2018, a 6.6 reduction in 17, 5.3 reduction in 16, and a 5.3 reduction in 15. So that is premium reductions over the last 10 years, despite the inflation, especially in the medical system.
That's a good point. Do you have any perspective on why it has decreased over time? Is it because of reduced time loss benefits, or?
I'd be curious to answers about that, because I know that inflation has not reduced substantially, especially in the medical sphere over that time period. I know that some of it would probably be related to safer work environments that we've seen since the implementation of OSHA. But I wouldn't think that 100% of that is attributable. And the other thing that I'd like to flag is that, and I'm a broken record on this every time, once the injury occurs, it is a zero-sum game. It's not that employers are paying for this now, whereas they weren't before, or that insurers are covering some costs out of thin air. It is that those costs are currently being shifted onto the working families, because the workers are losing that income because they had the injury at work. And so the idea of shifting some additional portion of that onto the industry that has been set up to insure against that risk, I find it a little hard to believe. If Oregon was back in the situation where we were one of the highest premium rates in the country, I would be sympathetic to that. But I think we're fourth lowest that I saw somewhat recently, and have had huge reductions over the past, what looks like over 10 years. So I understand concern about premium increases, but I also question where the parity is here, and whether this is just a huge cost shift on the backs of especially low income workers.
Yeah, it's an important topic. I'm sorry it was right at the end, and I wanted to do a time check. It is 10:58. Our meeting is scheduled to end in 2 minutes. And so I don't know if we can maintain our group past 10 o'clock. Are there any concerns with going a few minutes after? All right, I'm hearing none from the caucus. There is another hand raised with testimony, so I will allow that. Mr. Bennett.
Thank you very much. And I'll just be extremely quick, but on SB 705, we find this to be an extremely dangerous bill. It would overstate workers' wages, which also, when we collected premium, we did not collect premium on this higher rate. So it still would be, some retroactive benefit increases, because there's a lot of injuries that happen with long tail claims and whatnot. So there would be ones that we did not collect premium, but even regardless of that, workers' compensation, as the last speaker said, has been very healthy in Oregon. And one of the reasons for it is because the systems is in balance. One of the important things is that workers return to work on time. This, by overstating certain injured workers' wages, would be a disincentive to have an appropriate return to work, which could very much hurt workers' compensation system. I know no other state that uses such a basis for determining wages, and I think this would be a major mistake by the Oregon work comp system to adopt this system for determining wages. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. A hand has gone up from Scott Strickland. I'll turn it over to him before asking for feedback from Ms. Aguilar.
I don't know where in statute the point is to disincentivize people from using time loss. And I do want to call that out. We're talking about injured workers, and oftentimes injured workers who are the lowest wage workers who have no statutory requirement to have their benefits replaced, which could be 30 to 50% of their income. So they're taking a 30 to 50% income reduction and then an additional income reduction to incentivize them to get back to work, not healed, not better, not even in many cases medically stationary. That's, from a policy perspective, that does not in any way sit well with me, and I find that personally extremely offensive. I understand that that's not the intent, and we've received some testimony in the past, but being a medically stationary worker that was forced back to work partially because of loss of benefits, I can say that I don't know that I want to be a part of a system that is incentivized on forcing people back to work out of desperation, when what we talk about is access to care and actually getting people well. I have repeat appointments with my personal insurance for work comp issues that were passed on because I returned back to work. So there is this cost being shifted both to myself personally, but to my personal insurance because of lack of getting access to care that arguably statutorily I was entitled to. So I understand the perspective, and I respect that there's a lot of folks that think of this as some kind of economic incentive, but these are people's lives, and these are family members, and these are folks that are losing tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of retirement benefit when they would go to retire. And that's not even including the disproportionate impact of wage reduction for low-income families. So I understand we want to be respectful and professional, and I don't mean this as any kind of personal attack, and I respect the position. I'm glad that that was brought up, but I find that a very problematic way of running a work comp system.
I see Mr. Bennett has his hand raised again.
Yeah, I just want to say that was a misstatement of everything I said. I said it's a disincentive to get people to return to work in an appropriate time. I've never once said that people should return to work while they were not healed. When they reach MMI, they can return. And that was the statement that I made. I said, when you're exaggerating a worker's pre-injury and reimbursing them at a rate higher than, say, 67% of their former wage, there's a disincentive to return to work. I just want to be clear at this meeting, I never once suggested that any workers should return to work while they were still injured and in the healing process. I do believe if you overemphasize a worker's wages, that's a disincentive to return to work when they are healthy. And I mean, I know people can disagree, and I know we're over time, that's fine. But I never suggested anything that was just stated by the last speaker. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. And the comment as well, Scott, it's a good discussion. I see one more hand raised. I'm going to try again. Thais.
Well done. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Thais Lomax with Sedgwick again. I have a general question about the complexity of what's been suggested in reevaluating how to calculate the average weekly wage or the base for a specific subset of injured workers within the state. And just curious if anyone had considered just raising the minimum cap that is currently in place. As the statute sits now, we have average weekly wage that is established based on your job at injury and different ways to calculate it based on those. Okay, great, we've got that settled. Why not just raise that minimum cap to more than the $50 or 90%, whichever is lower, to something that's maybe based on a percentage of the state average weekly wage, or so many $100 per week versus the current 50, to bring it up to that 90% or the minimum cap, whichever is lower, which would, I believe, be more in line with other states and more fair to those low wage workers who are really of concern.
Is that, I guess that's a question for Ms. Aguilar. Aguilar, is that part of the consideration in putting this forward?
Co-chair, members of the committee, we have not explored that idea. I appreciate the thought there and the comment. That's not something we've contemplated before, but happy to engage in a conversation.
Thank you for the question. And thank you for the answer. I see Ryan Hearn has his hand raised as well.
Yeah, just a comment. Thank you, co-chair. You know, I think there's a lot of healthy discussion here. I think everybody brings value perspective to this discussion. I think the issue is large, and I'd be more interested in seeing a subcommittee or a group of MLAC members getting together and really hammering this out in a subcommittee group, because I think you're absolutely right. There's multiple avenues here to address this situation, to make it fair for both employees and management, labor and management, and low income and high income, and make it fair for everybody. But I think the issue is a lot deeper than just slapping a percentage on it and saying it's good. So just challenge us to explore those other options.
I guess we'll pause on that. Do you have any comment on the idea of a subcommittee, Ms. Aguilar? Is that something that the ACME would be open to, or?
Co-chair, members of the committee, that is probably a conversation that I would have to speak to my members about and get back to you. I think one thing that I'll just say is we want workers to heal, right, and get back to work and prevent re-injuries, and actually work for workers, the workers' compensation system, and which we think is the fundamental goal, right, of the workers' compensation system, to encourage workers to actually apply and file for workers' comp and access medical care. And I think the comment that was made earlier by the other co-chair is right too, of when people go out on a workers' comp claim, they're losing a lot of their income, and they're losing a lot of if there's like a private health insurance that they used to have access to. I think that was in conversation a couple of weeks ago before another comment was made of like, this is a lot for the worker, and I think that the worker wants to get back to work, but in order for them to get back to work and be healthy and to care for them and their families, there needs to be just a greater safety net there so that they can get back to work and continue contributing to society in a larger picture.
Okay, we have gone over, and I have heard from a caucus member that they need to leave, so I'm going to go ahead and just take the one last comment from the hand raised, and no, this is something that probably will need to be brought back. Is this something that will come to a future meeting? I'm imagining.
Co-chair and members of the committee, sounds like the answer is yes. We're happy to come back.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. Mr. Bennett, did you lower your hand? Are you going to defer to our next meeting?
I mean, I was getting ready to speak just quickly, very quickly.
Okay.
I just want to say, I second what and I'll butcher the name they said regarding Sedgwick. Just want to be clear that we really, APCIA, I'm talking about APCIA, does not really take a position on what benefit levels are. We believe there are ways to increase benefit levels. We like them to be negotiated between management and labor. We stick out that we do not want them to be retroactive. I think there were some aspects of this bill that were retroactive. Don't need to get into that before, but we are not opposed to something increases in benefit levels. We just don't want the increase to misstate wage levels in a way that may be a disincentive to have a worker who's able and appropriate to return to work have a disincentive to return to work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Ms. Aguilar, is there anything else that you need from this committee today to help you to advance your important bill?
Co-chair, members of the committee, I don't think so. I do just want to clarify for the record that the Senate Bill 705 with the -2 does not apply to retroactive claims. It's claims moving forward, claims filed on or after. So there's no retroactive payments happening or recalculation of old previous benefits. And the sound was like cutting out a little bit when comments were made, but I just want to clarify for the record, it's for claims moving forward.
Okay, thank you for that. Sorry, Mr. Bennett, I'm gonna go ahead and defer your comment to the next meeting. And when
Thank
we bring this back. Thank you for that. Is there anything else that you needed from the committee with that, after that, clarification? No?
Co-chair members, no, thank you. We will come back.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, that is the last item on our agenda. Administrator Watson, is there anything else to be brought before this committee at this time?
No, I just want to remind everybody, we have a virtual meeting on March 27th, and then we have our in-person meeting on April 3rd. Okay?
Thank you
I
for
will
that.
be unable to attend next week. So please excuse my absence. Thank you.
Very well, Missy, thank you for letting us know. Anyone else? Will we have a quorum?
I will also be out.
Okay.
Ryan out.
Yep.
Well,
I'll check with
have-
Stacy. Okay.
All right, so Terry and Scott and I will talk about it offline in our prep meeting to make sure we'll have a quorum for that. All right, well, since we've gone a little bit over and we just covered the agenda items, I will ask for a motion to adjourn just to make sure that there's nothing else out there.
No moved.
Yeah, a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, with that, I adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much for taking a little extra time in for this important work.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. You guys will be here next week. The week after the 3rd.